Okay, so we are now recording. This will be posted later for your benefit. Para in case you missed anything, you can always come back to the video. Okay. So as I was saying, last meeting we discussed standards followed by freedom. Okay. So when we have standards, usually we have this tendency to understand, or perhaps we can say na nanginahanglan jud ta mo sunod sa unsay kinahanglan buhaton, mga expectation, not really the expectations of society or the expectations of other people, but rather the expectations of our conscience, atong konsensya. And basically the standards are there simply because we need a guide, di ba? But do these standards hinder us from being free individuals, free people? Okay, then we came to understand that freedom is not so much the freedom to do what I want, the freedom to do what I wish will happen, the freedom to get what I want. Okay, simply because, remember, if I'm free, you are free, then those we deem as criminals are just as free, diba? Though we have to live with the consequences of that freedom, right? So therefore, it's not so much na gihad lang ta. Okay, standards, expectations aren't really hindrances from committing to our freedom. But freedom is there otherwise. Freedom is necessary, ba? Because we have to choose. There are choices we have to make. There are choices we have to decide on. And kung wala tay freedom, okay, then there is no real sense in morality, di ba? Di ta maka-decide unsay kaayuhan kung wata kabalo unsay daotan. We do not know what is good if we are not aware what is wrong. And with that realization, with that knowledge of certain behavior, certain action, certain intentions na dili maayo, we make a free choice, diba? We make a free choice as to whether or not we want to do the right thing, okay? Or we still, in the end, there are people who still choose to do the wrong thing. So how do we know? But let's talk about that later on. Alright, so moral dilemmas. With the freedom that we have and the standards that we adhere to, di man jud malikaya na there will be a conflict. Mag-conflict ang mga prinsipyo nato to certain extents. And this is where moral dilemmas come in. There is always the challenge of making a choice. Okay? You have to decide. Okay? You choose to come to class, not simply because you don't have a choice. Dilibot tugod na naka-schedule ko aning orasa para makasulod mo para sa akong session, para sa akong klase, but you still have a choice, ba? Are you willing to live with the consequences kung di ka mosulod sa akong klase? Nga na bitaw. Of course, this is not, it's just an example. Okay? So there are bigger choices that you have to make. So now let's try to understand unsa jud ay nang dilemma. What is a dilemma? Okay? So before we go into what a moral dilemma is, sabtan sa nato unsay konsepto aning dilemma. What it is, what concept, how do we understand this concept? Okay? So may I ask si Aklaw, can you please read the PowerPoint? Jaika? Alright. Tough. Wait. Tough na dili to. Tough. Okay. Padayon. Okay, very good. Sorry, wait lang. What the heck? Okay. So, moto siya, dilemmas. They involve choices. But dili lang siya simple nga choice na kini gusto ni nako suoton or dili, or gusto ko na diri ko mukaon or dili. A dilemma is a tough choice. Lisod siya na pilionon. Okay? Og ang tanan consequences, okay, na ay mga consequences ani mga choices na pareha na undesirable. Think na mga ang resulta sa pagpili sa mga choices na gihatag sa imo kay medyo dili kayo kauyunan ang resulta. Okay? There are choices that can be equally hard, equally difficult. Diba? Kay mo man joy point sa dilemma. You have to make a choice. Okay? So a choice is of course, syempre magpili kag isa ra. Okay? If you can only choose one, then that's not a choice. That's not a dilemma. Dili siya lisod. Okay? Aklaw, padayon. Continue reading, please. Jaika. Sige, go. Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Okay, so there are difficult choices, and not all difficult choices are necessarily mean that they are moral dilemmas. Okay, like you have a choice between choosing what you want to do and then choosing what you have to do. Okay, so you have the choice, for example, to come to class. You have the choice na muanhi ka pero matulog ka or galaag ka or gainom ka. Okay, so ang resulta either way is there are some things that you wouldn't like, di ba? Mupili kan muanhi ka pero di ka maminaw, at the end of the day wa kay matun-an, di ba? Or mupili ka na di ka muanhi at all, di ba? And it's still undesirable kay syempre there'll still be consequences either way, diba? So that is what we mean by a dilemma. These are difficult choices na even though you might say na sakto ni siya, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's an easy choice. Okay, so with that notion or the understanding of the word or the concept of a dilemma, let's now try to understand unsa pod daining moral na dilemma. Okay, what is a moral dilemma? Augusto, Renato Jr., can you please read? Renato? Okay. Sige. Anyway, medyo ginaagian si Renato. Sige, can I ask na lang Irish, Tangyan? Sige lang, go. Moral. Okay, very good, thank you. So here now is the difference. Okay, when you have to make a choice in a moral dilemma, it's either na kay you might be able to break certain moral principles, or you're going to have to go against certain moral principles. Okay, and it involves either choice. Okay, so we might say na ay conflict sa mga gina-require sa moralidad, di ba? So when morality tells us to do a lot of things, di ba? Like di ka dapat magpatay, di ka dapat mangawat, okay? And let's say for example, you know in your heart, or you know sa base sa konsensya o sa common sense, na di man jud maayo mo patay tao, na di man jud maayo na mangawat ka sa butang syempre na dili mo syempre when you steal something that doesn't belong to you, right? So let's say for example, you encounter a situation as to nakakita kag tao nagi-hold up. Okay, so the person has a weapon, ang hold upper na let's say pusil or kutsilyo, then gi-hold up niya sa katawo, then ikaw, you happen to pass by, nakita nimo ni na sitwasyon, nakita nimo na circumstance, what would you do? Okay, ikaw na immediately na naaan na sitwasyon, diba? So what are the choices you can make, diba? The choice can be na ikaw mismo mo intervene, mo tabang ka sa i-save nimo tong gi hold up, okay, or mudagan ka, or manawag ka sa police. Either way, there is a sense of urgency. There is also a sense na if you choose anything na kay break, na kay dili masundan na moral, or na kay sa imong konsensya, na kay kakulangan gihapon, diba? You could have done something immediately, diba? If you run away, wala diri makatabang sa gi-hold up. Kung motawag kag police, maghulat pa kag police na moabot, diba? Either way, something bad happens, or not necessarily something bad, pero there will be consequences na lisod, not lisod, pero the consequences will be harsh. The consequences might be something na dili ka ginahan. Okay? If you try to help the person, posible na ikaw noon ang madunggaban, diba? Pero ma-save ni mong person. If you run away, then wala di ma-save, pero imong konsensya mo magsigig sinamok nimo. Kung motawag kag police, muhulat pa ka sa police, then you would have daghan pag kay pwede mahitabo before mo abot ang police. Okay? So that's an example, albeit not really realistic. I mean, it can be realistic, pero that's just the thing, diba? Kinahanglan kag desisyon. Okay? And these decisions are not easy. Mga desisyon na lisod, mga desisyon na base makasalalay ang kinabuhi sa tao. Okay? Or ang well-being, or ang kinabuhi sa tao. Right? Now, we can understand further the notion of moral dilemmas by classifying them in 3 particular levels. Okay? Pila ka buok na ay tulo. Okay? We can classify moral dilemmas according to levels. Okay? Ang una is the personal moral dilemma. Kaduha is the organizational moral dilemma. Ang katulo kay ang structural na moral dilemma. Now, unsa man jud ni siya? What is a personal moral dilemma? What is organizational? What is structural? Okay, so let's try to understand first and foremost unsa ang personal na moral dilemma. Okay? Can I ask si Nadira Khalil to please read the PowerPoint? Okay, very good. Thank you. So, well, technically, moral dilemmas are mostly personal. Okay? For example, let's say na aksidente sa akong pamilya. I have a moral obligation to my family, of course. But I also have a moral obligation sa akong estudyante, sa inyo na dapat na mo tudloon, dapat na mo hatang lecture, dapat mo hatag ko sa mga konsepto sa ethics na angay ninyo matun-an, di ba? That is my moral duty. Kaya syempre, part man gyapon na sa inyong growth, part pud na sa akong profession. Pero isip pud usa ka anak, di ba? Usa ka igsuon. Okay? Then I have to take care of my family, di ba? Now, let's say for example, wala pa rin ako na PowerPoint, knowing na magklase ta karon pero na hospital akong mother. Okay? What choices do I have to make? Diba? Of course, we say obvious man yun ang choice. Diba? If you remember the characteristics sa moral standard, kung naay kaayuhan or kadautan ang dulot sa gibuhat sa katao, that falls under moral standards. And ay kaduha na characteristic is that mas mo lamang dapat ang moralidad kaysa sa uban values, right? So of course it's a no-brainer for me na dapat nakuunahon akong pamilya, akong relative na na-aksidente or unsa pa, dapat inadala ako sa hospital. But it's still a difficult choice, not only because ginahan ko sa akong trabaho, but tungod lang pod kay gusto ko na may matun-an. Okay? So either choice is difficult for me, personal siya na dilemma. Okay? So something has to give, something has to be sacrificed. Okay? That's what we particularly mean na kay mga personal na dilemma, na kay mga personal na issues na kinahanglan nimo iatubang. Okay? You have to face it. Okay? So kinsay magdesisyon ani, kinsay moral agent sa personal dilemma, personal moral dilemma? Syempre it's the person, ikaw, the individual person. Yeah, it can be you, it can be me. Okay? And what happens? Unsay consequences ani? Kinsay apektado aning decisions na mahimo sa kada tao? Yeah? It can be ang tao mismo nagahimo sa decision, ikaw. Okay? Pwede pod ang tao na apektado mismo sa desisyon nimo, or usa ka grupo na tao. Okay? Based on your decision. Okay? So kay syempre the decision can also affect your family. For example, when we say a group of people, it can be your family, your classmates, di ba? Kung ikaw treasurer, for example, dayon gisaligan ka sa kwarta, then gigamit nimo pang Shopee, di ba? It affects not only you, kay mo atubang man ka sa consequences ana, pero it also affects the people na nagsalig sa imuan na naghatag og kwarta. Okay? That's what we mean by personal moral dilemmas. Alright? Now, let's try to look at another example given by the French existentialist na si Jean-Paul Sartre. So we go back to Sartre. May I ask si Neil Caracena to please read the PowerPoint? Kinitanan? Yep. Madungan na ka. Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So, kana siya. This is an example that is technically 80 years old, no? This was in the 1940s, if familiar mo sa inyong world history. The Second World War, when Germany started to invade France. Okay? So, of course, during war, people die. Diba? In this example, nadaw sa estudyante na iyang igsuon na namatay tungod sa pag-invade sa mga Germans. Okay? So sa iyang pagtuo, okay, sa iyang kasing-kasing, sa iyang konsensya, nakaingon siya na kailangan niya mobalos. Okay? Syempre gi-invade na iyang country, gipatay pa iyang brother, right? So one might feel na siya dapat buhaton. Syempre na ikalaban ni sulod sa iyong balay, na itao na musul sa iyong balay, gipatay ang igsuon. Syempre unsay buhaton nimo, mobalo na dili sad sa ingon na mobalos ka, pero mangita ka justisya, di ba? But in this case, of course, the student is not alone, di ba? Sa iyang heart gusto siya mobalo, sa iyang heart gusto siya mo laban sa mga Germans, but napud siya kauban na inahan, iyang mother. He has to take care of the mother, not just to take care, but the fact na iyang mother na wala nag-igsuon, di po siya gusto na mamatay ang student. Okay? So Sartre then tells us na naiduha ka conflict sa obligasyon. Morally speaking, he says that dapat ko mo fight para sa akong country, nag-i-invade sa mga Germans. Okay? Pero akong inahan, no, given that nawadan siya isa ka anak, kung mulaban ko, walay seguridad na mabuhi pa ko. Nga na bitaw. Okay? So what should the student do? Atimana niyang mama. At least for start, he says that kini limited scope o iyang mama ra matabangan niya, pero sigurado na maatiman niya ang mama, yung personal devotion siyang mama, diba? Ang isa na yung gusto buhaton na mulaban sa German sa mga kalaban, okay, mas dako ang epekto, okay. Kung mulaban siya sa mga invaders, syempre he might be able to contribute, pero walay kasiguraduhan na effective iyang paglaban kay isa raman siya katao, right? So we tries to attempt to contribute to the defeat of an unjust aggressor. So unsay dapat niya buhaton? Okay, of course you don't have to answer that. So nagets niyo ang point. There are two conflicting principles. Let's say patriotism or your parental obligations or ang obligasyon nimo sa imong pamilya. Okay, that's what we mean by personal. You have kinahanglan siya i-resolve na ikaw mismo ang mo decide. Okay, you have to face the consequences of the choice, but at the same time dapat nimo panindigan ang choice. Okay, so either way lisod gyapon siya. That's the point of a dilemma. Lisod siya na choice, and this is on the personal level. Okay, it has to be resolved by you, imong decision, right? Right, so that was the personal moral dilemma. Now let's look at the organizational moral dilemmas. Okay, so ethical cases encountered and resolved by social organizations are organizational moral dilemmas. So ang una kay ma-resolve siya sa tao, sa isa ka tao, sa personal, sa imuha, okay, sa akua. Organizational is bigger kay it involves the organization, ang institution, ang grupo nimo, ang particular grupo kung aha ka apil. Okay, so this category includes moral dilemmas in business, medical field, and the public sector, to name a few things. Okay, so for example sa medical field, okay, for example a hospital that believes that human life should not be deliberately shortened and that unpreventable pain should not be tolerated encounters a conflict in resolving whether to withdraw life support from a dying patient. This is a common moral dilemma faced by healthcare organizations and medical institutions. Okay, so technically ang organization ang mag-decide. Okay, they have to make a difficult choice. Okay, so for example lagi kani sa medical field, so sa hospital or sa medical field in general, dili according to their practice, dili sila dapat, or at least maningkamot sila na i-sustain ang kinabuhi sa tao. Okay, dili dapat na ma-shorten siya. Pero at the same time, kung naay procedure na makahata og kasakit while ga attempt ka na mabuhi ang imong pasyente, would it still be worth it? Arap ito, dapat ba na muhatag pagdungag og kasakit ang mga doktor sa usa ka pasyente para lang mabuhi pa og dugay? Okay, either way, it's, one might say na dali raman na choice, sir. Actually it's not, kay they have the obligation na dapat mabuhi ang pasyente, dapat buhaton nila ang tanan, pero at the same time napos li obligation na iwala ang pain, iwala ang sakit. So unsay ma-prioritize nila ang pag-maintain sa kinabuhi sa pasyente or mawala ang sakit sa pasyente? So technically, what if, ang question is what if ang procedure or ang pagkabuhi sa pasyente gahatag ra gihapog sakit or kasakit sa iyang kinabuhi? Okay, so this is a decision that the board, or technically medical professionals, have to make, and it affects those involved in the organization. Okay, libog, no? Let's try another thing. So moral dilemmas also arise in professional work. Administrative bodies in business are confronted with situations in which several courses of action are possible, but none of them provide a totally successful outcome to those affected by the decisions or actions taken. So technically, sa decision sa mga organizations, particularly sa professional work, di ba? There are choices na oo makatabang, pero choosing one over the other does not really give a totally successful outcome. Dili kompleto kumbaga. Okay? So you might say, sir, ngano mangita na nito kag solution na masulbad ang tanan? Well, yes, that's good, that's nice, that's ideal. Pero kung tanaw na to ang realidad, we have to consider pod na to do something, another thing has to be sacrificed. Okay? Kung kinahanglan ka mabuhat og usa, napoy usa ka butang na kinahanglan masakripisyo para lang mabuhat ang isa ka butang. Okay? Which will further delve into later on. Okay? So mo to siya. So these moral dilemmas in business involve issues about corporate practices, policies, business behaviors, and the conducts and relationships of individuals in the organizations. Other business-related dilemmas pertain to the social responsibility of businesses, employee rights, harassment, labor unions, misleading advertising, job discrimination, and whistle-blowing. Okay, so in the case, for example, of the police, kariman mo tanan diri no, halos. So let's use that as an example. Puhon magpulis mo, or majority sa inyo ang magpulis. Kung dili magpulis, magsundalo, mag Bureau of Fire Protection or whatnot. Okay, when you join the organization, the PNP, the BFP, the AFP, okay, there will be choices that you have to make. There will be things na dapat nimo subayon. Okay, diba? And to some degree, there is na ay dignidad ang inyong profession. There is some sense of respect and understanding na dako kayog mando ang inyong profession puhon. God willing, pagpasar ninyo sa board, pag human ninyo sa eskwela. Okay? And when you think of it, oo, dako kayong ideal na maka-proud man jud ang magpulis ka no, maka-proud man jud kang mahimo kag sundalo, things like that. Aside from the fact na well provided sila, you'll be able to provide for your family, dili pud malikayan sa usa ka organization like the PNP or the AFP or unsa ba na ay instances na naadyoy dili maayo, mga daotan na ginabuhat sa mga dako na opisyales, mga high ranking na officials. Okay, of course not all, but we have to consider this. Yes, Ermac. Why? Wala man. Wala ni pagawas na permission. Okay, so padayon ta. So nag-gets na point. Musulod ka sa any kind of organization. Okay? Again, example PNP, or kung med student ka sa usa ka hospital. Okay, you will see things na mag-question nimo. Number one is the treatment or ang paggamit sa officials, sa uban officials sa ilang posisyon sa mga butang na dili maayo, mga daotan na butang, corruption, things like that. So ikaw, as part of the organization, you will have to make a choice. Panindigan ba nimo ang dignidad sa imong profession? I-call out nimo, isumbong nimo ang mali na ginabuhat sa imong superior, or mukonsente ka sa mali sa mga mas nakalamang sa imo. Okay? Either way, when you make that decision, at least this is in a way part gyapon ni sa personal, but it affects the organization. Okay? The moment na mag-decide ka within sa usa ka butang na muhat na epekto sa organization, it falls under organizational moral dilemmas. Okay? Dili lang siya personal. Okay? Kay again, it not only affects you, it affects the entire organization. Pero when we say organizational moral dilemmas, sa organization na siya taman. Okay? organization. For example, ang PNP, AFP, ang negosyo na imong gitukod, ang clan nimo, imong tribo, things like that. It affects that entire organization, that entire group. Okay? Then, yeah. So, on the part of the public sector, government leaders and employees have a moral duty to act in a manner that is fair and unbiased. They should be loyal to the public and ought to put the public interest before personal gain and fulfill duties of competency, integrity, accountability, and transparency. Okay? Right? So, the government itself is an organization as well. Okay? And they make decisions that affect the public sector. In other words, it affects everyone. Okay? Kung kinsay constituents sa mayor nato, that is syempre kita, right? So whatever decisions he makes affected tang tanan, particularly diri sa Iligan. Okay? Kasi syempre siya gud ang mayor, right? So having said that, public officials nonetheless may encounter foreseeable moral dilemmas in fulfilling these ideals. So, ethical or moral dilemmas which arise include the following. Okay? So, naay mga dilemmas na mo abot regardless of the organization. It could be mahimo kag whistleblower even if it means potentially derailing a policy objective one is pursuing. Resigning from organizations in which membership may give rise to future conflicts. Accepting gifts if it is legally permitted but creates the appearance of impropriety or makahatag siya appearance na mura kag nagpa-bribe. Okay? Whether or not to favor family, friends, or campaign contributors over other constituents. Okay? Favoring the agenda of one's political party over a policy one believes to be good for the community. Ug lastly, dealing with conflicting public duties inherent in serving both as a council member and as a member of an agency or commission. Okay, daghan kay siya, pero ang bottom line diri is particularly sa tanan nimo buhaton, sa tanan decisions na kinahanglan nimo atimanon or buhaton, there will arise certain conflicts, and with that conflict is the dilemma as to whether or not kini imong dapat buhaton or kanay imong dapat buhaton. Ang ending, the moment na makapili ka, it will have a significant effect on the organization, not just on you but the organization you belong to. Okay pa ba mo? Are you still there? Sound off daw kung pa mo. Okay, isa ba? Okay, so alright, so it's no worries kung wala mo yung mic, no big deal. Basta participate lang as often as you can. Okay, so that was organizational structures, organizational moral dilemmas. So again, sa personal, dapat siya kuan sa syempre sa personal. Okay, it involves only you and the person or the people na apektado sa dilemma. Okay, ang organizational on the other hand, ang decision making is those involved in the organization. Okay, the decision not on the policy but on the decision to do the right thing or to do what might be best. Okay, and apektado lang ang mga miyembro ana na organization. Okay, so now on the structural moral dilemma. Okay, these structural moral dilemmas pertain to cases involving network of institutions and operative theoretical paradigms, okay, as they usually encompass multi-sectoral institutions and organizations. They may be larger in scope and extent than organizational dilemmas. So ang organizational, ang apektado lang is ang naa sa organization, syempre. Sa structural, technically tanan mismo apektado. Okay? Apektado ang imong organization, apektado dayon ang organization sa lain. Okay? So let's try to look at an example. Okay? So let's look at ang presyo sa tambal. 'Di ba? Mahal, right? So an example is the prices of medicine in the Philippines, which are higher compared to other countries in Asia and in countries of similar economic status. Factors affecting medicine prices include the cost of research, presence of competition in the market, government regulations, and patent protection. So in other words, daghan kayo kailangan tan-awon before ta makaingon na before ta makahangyo or makademanda na ipabarato ang tambal. Okay? Realidad siya. Pero it is a sad reality na mahal ang tambal tungod daghan kay tag or ang gobyerno daghan kay kinahanglan tan-awon ay nila mag-consensus na ipabarato ang tambal o realidad sad na. Okay? So the institutions concerned may want to lower the costs of medicine. So for example, ang hospital sa school, hangyo sila na ipabarato ang tambal, hangyo sila sa presidente, hangyo sila sa senado. Okay? So they ask na ipabarato. Okay? Kaya syempre, kung barato ang tambal, kinsa makabenepisyo ang tanan, 'di ba? Labi na ang mga pulubi, ang mga uyamot. The poor can benefit the most sa barato na tambal o realidad sad na. Okay? But such a move may ruin the interests or legal rights of the involved researchers, inventors, or discoverers and pharmaceutical companies which own the patent of the medicines or healthcare technologies. Okay. So one might say no na dapat man sila mo give way. But the thing is things don't come cheap and things don't come free. Again, daghan kay kailangan tan-awon ayha nato or ayha ma-consider na ipabarato ang tambal. Okay? So, let's say for example, ang not really recent, this was years ago, no? Ang recent push na for universal healthcare. Okay? So, an example of a dilemma which is also structural in nature is that of the universal health care. Locally applied, it is called kalusugan pangkalahatan. So it is the provision to every Filipino of the highest possible quality of health care that is accessible, efficient, equitably distributed, adequately funded, fairly financed, and appropriately used by an informed and empowered public. The kind of words, no? So basically, ang bill na kalusugang pangkalahatan o universal healthcare kay muhatag og tambal, syempre not necessarily tambal pero ma-available ang tambal na nindot og quality. Okay, dili lang siya generic, dali siya ma-access. Okay, paspas ang epekto or efficient, not really paspas pero effective. Okay, ma-distribute equally sa tanan and funded properly, financed properly and fairly. Okay, and magamit og tarong sa public na kabalo, na inform og tarong kung unsaon pag-take sa tambal. Okay, and that sounds good, maayo man jud na siya, that's good, that's nice, dapat lang pod na natay free healthcare unta, right? Pero okay, let's go to that. So ang kalusugang pangkalahatan as a government mandate aims to ensure that every Filipino shall receive affordable and quality health benefits by ideally providing adequate resources, human resources, health facilities, and health financing. In other words, hatagan og dakong budget ang DOH, okay? Department of Health. So dapat tanan barangay, tanan na ay health center, tanan munisipalidad na hospital, okay, na ay sapat na resources para maatiman ang health sa mga Pilipino. Okay? Pero maayo siya, oo, pero health financing is first and foremost a big issue here. Ang kwarta na pod, 'di ba? Government could set aside a bigger budget for health for the implementation of this provision, 'di ba? So dapat mahatagan og budget, in other words, by the government. Pero this would mean cutting down allocations on other sectors such as education or public works. Kaya technically, that's how it is. Okay? Kung naatay hatagan og mas dako nga budget, naay kinahanglan isakripisyo sa uban sectors. Okay? If we remember sa previous admin, gidako ang sweldo sa police, sa sundalo. Okay? So maayo siya. Oo, dapat man jud atimanon ang mga pulis, ang mga kuan, sundalo, kay sila may ga-protect sa atong sovereignty. But at the expense kinsa may nakuan, kinsay nawat gikaltasan og budget. Okay? It was the education sector. All right? So, are these two things equally important? Siyempre, we have to say yes. Kung walay education, right? Kung walay gatudlo og tarong sa criminology, unsa makaingon bata na maayo ang mga pulis na mo gawas sa mga eskwelahan? Right? So that's what we mean by structural dilemmas. You make a decision, okay, or the president or the government makes a decision na hatagan ning priority. So pag prioritize ani ng isa ka butang, apektado ang isa. Okay? And when these things happen, of course, na-benefit ang uban, pero the rest will suffer. Okay? So that's what I mean by when you make a choice, equally maayo sila, equally they deserve good budget, they deserve good financing, pero you still have to choose one. Okay? So one will have to suffer. It's not necessarily bad, pero it's not necessarily good food. Okay? That's what we mean. So when we make a decision in terms of facing moral dilemmas, there is always this notion na lisod siya. In other words, lisod siya. Okay? You want to do good, but at the expense of the other. Diba? So instead of doing, it's not necessarily bad again, but it's difficult. That's okay. May point sa dilemmas. It's a tough decision. Okay? Unsa may i-priority nimo, ang armed forces or ang education or ang healthcare. Okay? Kung moayong kag healthcare, medyo mag-suffer ang armed forces o ang education. Kung mayroon kag education, mag-suffer ang healthcare, ang public works, ang armed forces. Okay? So these are things that kinahanglan take into account before we make any decision. Alright? So in retrospect, no, dilemmas again are difficult choices. Lisod siya. And no one choice, even though nindot siya, there are consequences in choosing that can be bad. Okay? It doesn't necessarily make the person making the decision bad, but it still affects the people around the person making the decision or the people making the decision. Okay? So mo to siya. Personal moral dilemma, the consequences is small. Small to some extent, pero it's more personal. Okay? Those who are affected are those na immediately affected by the decision. Ikaw, another person, or a group of people. Pero it's more personal, private. Organizational, ang affected are members of the organization lang. Okay? Ang decisions that are made will affect those within the organization lang o sa mga affiliated anina organization. So structural moral dilemmas, choices are made by the highest authority, or let's say the government, okay? And with those decisions, apektado tang tanan. Apektado ang line organization, apektado yung personal life. Okay? So technically, mo to siya. Technically, what we're trying to say here is that decisions are difficult. Moral decisions are very difficult. Kay it's either you choose one aspect na makauyon imong konsensya, pero at the same time, even if makauyon imong konsensya, mabother igapon imong konsensya tungod sa other choice unta, makatabang gyapon unta ni siya. So they are both difficult, they are both uh, they can be beneficial, di ba? But at the end of the day, the choices we make will almost always not be enough. Okay? Okay, there sa kalibutan ron, there's no such thing as 100% na mahatagan nimo ang kinahanglan sa tanan. Okay? So ana siya. So when you become professionals pohon, you will have to face all of this. And even now, as students, as chill as isip mga anak sa imong ginikanan, isip higala sa imong barkada, okay, you have to make difficult choices. Will you be a good example to your friends, or will you be a bad example? Okay, will you choose na seryosohon ninyo inyong 4 years of college, or baliwalaan lang? Okay, and with that, we end our discussion for the prelim. Okay, I cannot meet you next week kay I'll be in Cebu. So your exam, I'll just post it sa inyong stream. Okay, so of course it'll be open notes, pero it's not on memorization. All I need from you is to show me na naamoy natunan. Okay, so basically the exam will be essay type, and it will be situational. Okay, ipakita sa kuha na namin na sabtan sa prelim na to. Good? Questions? Clarifications?